There's some conversations we need to have. The conversation around child support versus a man being present. And the question becomes, do I have to choose? I want to talk today about run me my money. Whose money is it? And is it fair? What does that look like? We're pulling this from a conversation that we saw on social media where Block is talking about why he was put on child support and what that looked like, and the whole world cringed. And there was a moment where it was not without a response from his daughter and the daughter's mother, Candy Burris. I want to talk today on I've Got Daddy Issues about this space of child support, is it fair, and run me my money. I'm bringing to this conversation my friend, author, mother, and yes, she said it on another show. She is the table.
I am.
She's everything. Ronika Ward. And then I'm bringing Mrs. Joi Stokes. I know you're like, well, why did you just bring women to the table? Well, because they have a perspective that I believe women and men need to hear. Too often we're hearing from women who are disgruntled and frustrated, and we're hearing from men who like, this ain't fair, why am I dealing with this? I wanted to bring women who I've had conversations with, and I know that your perspective is distinct, and you've been in places where, yeah, you've been frustrated, but you learn through the journey. I want to ask this question of you both. Do you feel like child support is fair?
Oh, wow. Well, now, where I'm at in my place right now, I think I feel two ways. I don't, everybody's circumstance and situation is different, and I can only speak for mine. But for child support, for me, financially, it will, it would help. It's definitely be beneficial to be helped. But I also don't agree with having a father arrested because he can't make the means to support the child, and for me, and I can only speak for me, time is more important. They spend with their dad because I have little girls, and little girls need their dad. So he would be doing a disservice to me if he's arrested behind bars because he cannot afford to pay. But then he spends time with them. He makes sure they go to the best schools, things like that. So, I just feel like it took a lot of growth because it affects the kids in so many ways. It makes the situation so volatile when it becomes an issue about money, about the money. And then, well, like we spoke earlier before, it don't even be about the money sometimes. It be about women and their feelings.
Okay, we about to, because we jumping.
Okay.
We jumping. Okay. And I want people to take that in what you said earlier.
Yes. But let me also just say this, because I look at it two sides, because you have some men who leave and feel like, oh, well, y'all be good. I give you what I give you what I give you when I give it to you.
Yeah, we're not talking about
it don't work like that, and it don't work like that. In those situations, it's like the woman feel like she have no other choice but to possibly put him on child support to get some money to even assist and take care of this child, because it's hard, being a single mother, so yeah, it is. Mm-hmm.
We're going to get to that. So
so the question was, do I believe it's fair?
It's fair. And fair may be a tough word. I recognize that. I'm using my words wisely. Okay. I want you to expound on that. If you don't feel fair is the word. And I knew that when I said it.
Just like Ronika said, every situation is different, For me and our household, when we had Brenton, when we ended up going to court and having conversations, we didn't think that it was necessary for us. I knew that I could take care of my son. I knew that his dad could take care of him. And so we were like, hey, look, when he's with me, I got it. When he's with you, you got it. If there are things that we have to do together, birthday parties, trips or whatever the case is, then we can split it, or maybe one year you got it, next year I got it, So in our situation, we just didn't necessarily think it was a necessity for us. It just made things so much easier because, again, we were both financially stable, but we also didn't have to bicker and argue over $5. I mentioned that I was in a relationship, and every month she would call him and argue with him because he did not round up He gave her exactly what she was supposed to have, and he did not round up, and every month it was about $5. And I can't believe and it was every name in the book. It was like,
is it about the $5?
I mean, I had no clue what it was about. I mean, I knew that he had moved on. I knew that the daughter was older. So I was like, well, it can't really be feelings there anymore. I mean, is she mad that he's moved on? Like, I have no clue. But I just used to say to him, why don't you just give her the $5? But then it was like, no, because it's not her $5, and I was just like, and it just was too much, and so later on, fast forward, when it came time for us to figure out what we wanted to do, it was just like, it just wasn't necessary,
I like that word. Not to cut you off. Is child support necessary becomes a great question. Yeah. I believe in certain situations,
yes,
it creates more drama and trauma than necessary. Yeah. I do not agree with airing the idea that a woman shouldn't ask for child support because she makes more money than you do.
Right.
Because honestly, the question, run me my money, right? It's not her money either.
Right.
It's the child.
It's
allegedly,
yes,
supposed
it's
to
supposed
be
to
for
be
the child. Right,
money.
exactly.
It doesn't belong. It's called child support for a reason. Right. It belongs to the child. You divvy up your part, she divvies up her part. And when it becomes this conversation of, is it necessary to put a man in a system that is structured and designed, as you're getting into, to destroy him? I'll talk about that a little bit in a moment.
But then the other flip side is it's not always the men. So should the woman be put on child support? There are really amazing men that are taking care of their children, and they might be the custodial parent. And so, hey, should he put her on child support?
So let me give
it's
some
not
journey.
just,
Let me give some context to that. Yeah. I have had situations that come, to me for work, and there are men who are raising their sons and their daughters. And there was a point where a gentleman, he said, I've done it without her for, 12 years, but they're teenagers now. And this is getting, real expensive.
Yeah, exactly.
And so he came to us seeing if we could help get him on, get some work and get some, some help with him putting her on child support. That was a tough place, not only for me, but for him. Because even when we went into the child support office and I was supporting him and the attorney that we had was supporting him, they were talking to him like he was nothing. And I had to knock on the plexiglass window and say, girlfriend, he is the custodial parent. And even if he's not, no one deserves to be talked to the way that you're talking to this man. You need to reel that back. Block was wrong. And I'm using their names at this point. You're wrong for putting it out there. But I do understand where his heart comes from. Because you put him into a system that could have hemmed him up in some ways. Rosie, talk about, because you were talking about that a moment ago when because you put a lot out there and there's a lot to unpack. Can you talk to us about it for a second?
Definitely. And just getting back to what you said about the system.
Yeah.
I think that is just, when you have somebody that's in the system, it's so hard to even make any money to even fund or take care of anybody when you can't get a job. You can't even, certain things that hinder you when you're in the system. And it's just unfair. And like I said, when it comes for me, they would do a disservice to me if they're behind bars because they can't pay, for their child or give me money.
Have you ever thought about, is there child support in your dynamic? And even answering that question, Joy, because you guys have some very distinct journeys that I believe women need to take heed of. Maybe it's not for you per se, but you can think out of the box is all I want to show you today.
And I will say this, I've had to go to the route where, so, I put him on child support, but also I ended up taking him off of child support because he couldn't financially, afford to pay. And then, he got arrested, in the midst of that, and they was going to find out that the money was in the, he had a child support in the rear. So when you find, I didn't want them to, it's even worse. So they will keep you, until, and the child support got up to about 25, 30 grand at this point. So they will keep you until you pay that money. And I knew he didn't have it. So I'm like, no, I ended up just taking him off of child support, and we was able to come up with an agreement where so we communicate, you know, whatever our needs are, we met, and we just have a better relationship.
I was just about to ask, did that make your relationship better? Was going to be my question.
That's the biggest thing is the communication.
It made it so much better. But before then, when I had him on child support, our relationship was so toxic where we couldn't even have a conversation over the phone because it was about the money. And guess what? Not only just the money, his driver's license, his passport, everything that he tried to do was just, you know, it was locked up. He couldn't do anything. So for me, if I'm calling about anything, just imagine the energy that you have that, you know, so and then the kids involved, you know, and if the kids is going from house to house, who want their kid to go over there with that type of energy and they got to go back and forth?
Yeah. Right. Just
back and forth. Alone. So the energy alone, it was not worth it. So now I'm so thankful. I mean, it's such a blessing because we so much at a peaceful place, and our relationship just as friends.
I was gonna say when I met y'all, these two, when I first met them, they were dancing together. This one was 9.5 months pregnant, killing it on the dance floor. And she even told me recently, we're friends again.
Now, and it's so amazing. Like,
and I know some women are like, well, if I gotta give it up to be friends, that's something else. That's your fatherless stuff showing up right now. That is not the truth of who you are. I kept hearing someone talk to me about, you know, oh, that's so much trauma. That's so much trauma. You know, some cultures aren't raised in survival. And when they're not, anything you talk to them about that has a little tinge to it, they're, oh, that's so much trauma. That's what she keeps saying. That's so much trauma. And you know what I heard? That's so much drama. And I realized that baby mama and baby daddy drama is really the trauma manifesting itself. And that's what's happening in so much of this because we've made relationships transactional. And in making the relationship transactional from the dollar sense, run me my money, even in that tone.
The context of just the words alone is very, it could be disrespectful, it could be hurtful. I mean, you know, I think that we have to take into consideration that, you know, the kids involved, I mean, with that particular situation, I mean, clearly she sees what's going on, you know, and I think that we forget that. Like, the kids are going to grow up to see us argue, to read, you know, what he wrote about her or read what he said about me or whatever the case is. And I think that we get in our feelings sometimes and we forget that. And the children should always be the forefront of what we do. And so for both parties, for everybody,
and I don't think he was responsible,
involved.
And I think she was reactive.
And see, the hard part is that when you know somebody so well, you know what you can say to trigger somebody. So he knew that if I said this, that it was going to trigger her and she was going to respond and it probably wasn't going to be positive. And I think that that's the other hard part, you know, is that we're not coming from a place of love sometimes. And I love what you said because you were just saying that the communication, if we really do kind of put our feelings, you know, away, tuck them in a corner and be like, okay, the relationship didn't work out, but we created these amazing children, and just say, okay, regardless of what happened, what can we do to better this child? You know, the co-parenting experience for the child, because at the end of the day, you know, hopefully everyone can evolve, hopefully everyone can grow. You know, even me and my son's dad, you know, we're great friends now, you know, I mean, and shucks, it just makes everything so much easier because we can communicate. We don't have to have these feelings of hurt, you know, pain. I mean, the relationship didn't work and it's okay. You don't have feelings of ownership
over the child.
Well, then there's that too, because, you know, at the end of the day, you know, I don't own him. He doesn't own him. Brenton is Brenton, you know, and Brenton is going to have to deal with everything that we do to each other, you know. And so I think that the communication part is the main thing. If I can just communicate, hey, this is what, you know, he needs, or vice versa. Hey, this is what Brenton needs every month, or, you know, we have these classes, these extracurricular things or whatever, you know, and then just let that be what it is. And then, you know, if however you deal with it financially, you know, you deal with it. I know that my dad paid the mortgage and my mom did all the, you know, the other bills. It's very, very similar when you think about your children, you know, like, okay, if your child's in private school, I'll take care of private school and you take care of swimming and boxing and all the other stuff or whatever.
It's a partnership. You know? We talked about this in other episodes. It's a partnership when you're in relationship, but when you have children, it's co-parenting. It is a partnership, and you have to move as partners. This is not about one person being sole custodian and one person winning and one person losing. And we make it a win-lose situation too often.
Yeah, Joy, you said something so true. Like you have, when you're in a toxic, when you're in a situation and you have kids, they got to figure out how to even deal with mom and dad when we both at each other. Like, people don't understand just the trauma that the kids go through alone.
Yes.
Based upon, and even the women, like, use these, it's not even about the money. It's just about she and her feelings. It's not even about the money. Sometimes
a lot of times.
if you about you and your feelings and you just want to get back at him because he moved on, and my ex-husband, he moved on and got married. But again, we at such a blissful place, because this lady loved my kids like they're her own, and I love that. And I have nothing but respect for,
But when you don't have someone who's like you, who's respecting it on the other side and creating chaos, I have learned that children will bring their mother's emotional baggage into the new home, creating situations for that home.
Yes.
And you have to heal.
Or even the ex-wife, what if she did, what if she picked up, whereas though my kids picked up her energy, and when they come home, so that was another situation and never been that. So I'm just thankful that, and it's a lot of situations that, it's like that. The kids picking up on their, taking on the mom's emotions and come, giving it out to the dad, or vice versa, because of what they're hearing,
or not dealing with it at all. And then now you've created someone who's got all these emotions pinned up, and he don't know or she don't know what to do with it. That's even worse.
I got a couple of questions that I want to ask before we wrap this up. Child support is rooted in the welfare system. With the lobbying and all of the legislation that I do, I had to learn about this. And they kept telling me when I would go to DC, oh, you got to wait for the welfare reform to come up. And I'm like, why the heck am I waiting for welfare reform to deal with fathers' rights and dads having time with their children and child support? Because it's actually it's all connected. It's called Title 4D. And it was intended to put women in a position where they were already pitted against the men. We don't realize that there was a system created, and the Moynihan report tells us this, but we weren't made aware of this. We weren't made aware that there was a system putting the black woman pitting us against each other from the onset, and now we've taken it on, taken it over, and now we're using it without even thinking about where it came from. We're not even thinking about the root of why this was put in place. It's not because every man is a deadbeat. The statistics show that 70% of men who owe child support make less than $10,000 a year. When we're talking about the candy and the block situation, right? That's scary,
tough.
right?
Yeah.
He had money.
Yeah.
So it's not like we're talking about a man who doesn't have money in that situation. Could he have provided? He said, I take care of mine. It also goes into how we view taken care of.
Yeah, everybody's got a different
what that
definition
looks
of
like
that,
from a female perspective. When you didn't grow up in a home with a father, i.e., these relationships we're talking about, how you view taking care of comes from a female perspective and not a male. And when a man shows up in order to be present versus the presence, when he shows up, we don't even know what that looks like. So we're like, you ain't doing nothing.
Right.
You ain't providing anything.
Right.
You're not doing it. And they are.
Right.
It's from the male's perspective. And we have to trust that. Were you able to freely trust, both of you, that these men were able to do that? And if you were, how did that happen? Why?
I knew without a shadow of a doubt that Brenton's dad was going to hold him down over and over and over again, because truth be told, he learned that from his father. I mean, his father was an amazing man. Rest in peace, Nandel. And so I knew that at the end of the day, if something was to happen to me, Brenton was going to always be taken care of, so I never had to worry about, that part. I knew that V was going to give him his time. I knew that he was going to give him his love and his finances. You know what I mean? And it's so cute because he just had a 12th birthday and he just bought 2 shares of Apple stock. His dad gave him his birthday money, and, we had been talking to him about investing and everything. And I was like, dang, hold up, look, I ain't got 2 shares of Apple stock. I mean, and when you start to think about it, just teaching that alone, I mean, most adults might not, because they weren't weren't taught to invest their money in stock, you know, at a young age. So I never really worried about that. I knew that when we had Brenton, we had him because we loved each other, and I knew that at the end of the day or whatever, regardless, like, again, whatever was going to happen, that Brenton was going to be taken care of. And it was really a relief, you know. I mean, you know that Vashon has custodial, you know, he's the custodial parent, whatever, you know, that means for people.
And that would be taboo for
you
women.
know.
But that's because you didn't see him as something you owned, or
No,
you know what I'm saying?
because I knew that at the end of the day,
able to do that.
I knew that Vashon was going to hold Brenton down without a shadow of a doubt. And I also knew that we were raising a son, and so he needed his father in his life, you know. And so let's be clear. I mean, I'm fully present in Brenton's life. Like, ain't no question about that, you know. But I also knew that he needed his dad. And I feel like, I remember when I went to Africa, it was a family, and they gave their 2 daughters up to a home that could take care of them. Well, here, we'll be on a struggle bus trying to take care of our kids, 4 or 5 jobs, welfare, child support, you know, not being able to take care of the kids because, you know, we're working so much or whatever, just to say that we have our kids at home with us. And the mentality for me was, if I'm struggling, or if I'm not in a good mental place, or if I'm not in a good financial place, why would I keep my child from the person who, or persons, because, you know, grandparents or what have you, the persons who can take a better job, who can take care of them in spite of where I am right now.
Because
you know what
we
I'm
have
saying?
to be it all.
And I learned a
most
long
toxic
time ago that
situations.
that was not what I needed, and that I would be doing, not just me, but my child, a disservice if I'm struggling, trying to just be his mom, you know what I mean, for everybody else. And so I was like, nah, look, you got it, and we got it together. And, you know, and thank God we got it together.
And it's worked for you.
And it's worked for all of us. I mean, he's got an amazing stepmom. I mean, you know, it takes a village. And I think that that's the other part too, is that we forget that it takes a village. It's like, don't you touch my child. Nah, if he did bad, whip his butt on the way home. All the homes. My dad used to tell me that on the way home, if he was bad in school, you know, every household was like, you know, you're going to get it when you get home, or everybody said something. And that theory is gone now. It's like, no, don't talk to my child. Don't discipline my child.
I don't want my child over there if she over there. You know?
I tell all my friends, if Brenton and Sila do something that they're not supposed to do, make sure you say something to them immediately, and then let me know, and then I'll handle it as well too, because I know that I can trust my children with my village and my family. And if you can't, then maybe you need to reassess your village. But I mean, I shouldn't have to be worried about whether or not you're gonna discipline him the wrong way. I know that y'all are coming from a place of love. And so, you know, I mean, for me, that was the main thing.
I want to know your perspective. we got to cut this because we pushing our time here. But I want to, could you trust him, and why? No, it's not you. That has nothing. You hit those are some gems, boo.
I can definitely trust, you know, both my child, you know, both of them, because, you know, they take great care of our daughters. You know, they want to make sure they're in the best schools, you know, have the best education, you know, and that's so important. So I definitely trust them. And even, you know, their stepmom, I trust her as well. I trust her and her village, you know, and it's amazing. It's amazing that where we at now. We had to get here. It took hard work, you know, but I'm so thankful that we are our village now. And even for her kids, I feel the same. I would, you know, exude the same amount of love for her kids as well, because it is a village, you know, and we got to work together to make it work. So absolutely, I trust both of them, you know, and they love their daddy so much. I mean, they just daddy's girls, you know. So, and I'm so glad that they are so heavily in their life, and they know that, and they know what love feel like from their father. Like, that is so important. You know, even with me, when we wasn't speaking, we wasn't seeing eye to eye, I never once denied him to see his children, because I grew up without my dad. So I knew how important, regardless of how
Don't
I feel,
repeat the cycle.
regardless of how I feel, if I can be, mad as, smoke coming out my ears, I'm so mad. But again, if this dad calling, he want to come see his kids, your father outside, he's on the phone.
Whether he paid the child support or not. You
Right,
can't use child support
because
as
truth be
ransom.
told, time is more important than money.
Okay, so we're going to wrap that up with that statement. Time is more important than money.
For me.
It is the presence over the presence, the gifts. It is most important. What we learned today is these relationships should not be transactional. The money does not belong to mama. It belongs to the children. And we need y'all to stop triggering one another with this foolishness. Fatherlessness does create a space where we don't even know what it looks like for the woman to take care of the children and the father to take care of the children. I am so grateful for these two women and their perspectives and their dynamic, because they taught you something. They taught you it's okay if you need to surrender and say, you know what? He's a boy or he's a girl, and it's time for them to go live with their father. It's time for them to go and have that time with them, because you know what a father does just as much as a mother? He nurtures and he develops. Child support is not necessary, but providing for your children is. And you too get the opportunity to determine what that looks like. And here's the other piece that I need you to understand. These women talked about trusting these men. You know why? Because it was key in their selection process. Start choosing differently and you will get a different outcome. This is I've Got Daddy Issues, and I'm Dr. Torri J.